Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Technology Leader Panel by Distribution Strategy Group. This one's called The Impact of AI on Working Capital for Distributors. Man, working capital, it's the financial lifeblood of distributors. And now there are whole new tools available with AI so that you can get better working capital performance while also improving customer experience. I mean, these tools are amazing and they were never around until AI came along and enabled them. But even great technology applied well, if it's not AI, is still just a phenomenal way to improve working capital performance. I've got some great panelists today. I'm going to bring them in a minute. And before we do that, though, let's get into a product that we offer from Distribution Strategy Group called Demand RX. If you want to know the sales potential by product category, by customer, by prospect, we've got the best tool around for doing that. It will help you go wallet share. It will help you define your ideal customer profile. It will help your sales reps be more productive, and you can evaluate how well they're doing penetrating customers with new product lines. It's really a great tool. And here's another look at the just one sample product line by category with or product line by for a specific customer. But you also get wallet share, market share out of it, so you can aggregate this stuff up. It's a really cool tool. And then do not miss our upcoming Profit and Productivity Summit for distributors. That's November 11th through 13th in Chicago. You'll learn how to improve margins, manage cost to serve, implement better purchasing strategies to lower your costs, maximize rebates, drive marketing co-op, unlock hidden sources of cash. We all have them. Incredible lineup of speakers. Make sure you don't miss this event. And if you can't make it, find someone from your company who can. All right, let's bring in our panelists. I am delighted to welcome Graham Smith, who's the Business Development Manager at Esker, Chandra Subramanian, who's the CEO of ORS Group, Greg Artunian, who's the Director at Epicor. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Very good.
Good, good. Well, let's do
Doing well.
introductions in the order that you're on the screen. So, Graham, we'll go with you first. Tell us about Esker. Tell us about your career. Get everybody up to speed on what you do.
Definitely. Ian, thanks for having me today. I'm Graham Smith, Business Development Manager here at Esker. Started my career in industrial distribution, working with personal protective equipment manufacturers and distributors, and did that for about half a decade. Been with Esker for about 7 years now. Esker is a SaaS company where we help other companies to increase operating margin, increase productivity by leveraging applied AI in processes like source to pay, invoice to cash, and customer service type operations. And again, thanks for having me.
You bet. We're delighted that you're here. Thank you for joining us today. Chandra, you're next, my friend.
Thank you, Ian. Great to be here. Thanks for having me at the webinar. My name is Chandra Subramanian. I'm the CEO of Operational Research Systems. And I've been in the quantitative modeling AI space for well over 25 years. I have a degree in physics and computer applications. And a good part of my life has been spent using AI-based technologies for solving really important complex problems in the financial services industry, asset management, prime brokerage. We did a lot of work on risk using techniques that we call AI now, but we've been doing this for many, many years. At ORS, we bring many of these techniques into the retail, manufacturing, and distribution industry, and help distributors make important decisions such as forecasting, improve the accuracy of forecasting, inventory optimization, supply chain network planning, distribution planning. We help our clients reduce cost of inventory, improve service levels, make sure you don't have obsolete stock, and your buy plan and purchase plan meets the demand or expected demand in the market. So customers have used us for reducing overall working capital. They've reduced improved margin, improved service levels. I'd love to talk about some of the use cases and experiences we've had in the industry today.
Awesome. That's great. And Greg, your turn.
Thanks a lot. Really pleasure to be here today, Ian. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to, talking shop with the other panelists. My name is Greg Hartunian. I'm a sales director here over at Epicor Software. My prior role was the CEO of Smart Software Incorporated. That is a supply chain and demand planning software solution that joined Epicor on May 1st. Epicor acquired Smart Software, and now I'm responsible for really educating Epicor customers, the sales team, implementation teams about how to really leverage the AI-based technology embedded into our inventory planning and forecasting applications to really improve profitability by making planners better decision makers. Really, our whole focus in my whole career, 25 years, has really been around helping companies move from really manual processes around inventory planning and forecasting that tend to really rely on intuition, averages, multiples of those averages, tribal knowledge, which are all really important, but by itself really can't take a business to the next level to maximize what is, for really all distributors, the largest asset on your balance sheet. And so with Epicor, the inventory planning and optimization suite that was acquired from Smart Software is integrated to its ERP solutions. At Epicor, we have a variety of solutions that can help distributors from ERP to inventory planning, forecasting, and optimization, and other add-on solutions to round that out. So looking forward to learning more from the other speakers and sharing my insights as well with all of you. Thank you.
I was at Grainger for a long time ago, but for a long time. And we used to have this saying that there were two kinds of inventory forecasts, wrong ones and lucky ones. And, I think that speaks to the frustration around inventory, right? I mean, human beings are fickle creatures. And so, you never really know what the demand's going to be, but some tools are better than others at predicting it. And then when it comes to, cash flow or, AR, there was always this tension between the sales force that wanted to, give endless lines of credit and the finance people who wanted to give little or none, right? And so I think that's sort of the nature of distribution, that it's a balance, right? You're never going to get it. You can't hit 100% availability, but you have to like going from 96% to 97%, which is a very high standard, but making a 1 point difference is huge in terms of the financial impact it brings to the firm and the satisfaction it brings to customers. So I think this is one of the reasons I think AI is so good at some of this stuff, is that it's very good at making those incremental gains that were not available with traditional software. And as AI gets better, those gains become increasingly more than just incremental. And I think that's going to continue. Anybody have a thought on that, or am I framing that incorrectly? That's okay too. Chandra, what do you think?
Yeah, spot on again. Basically, the risks in making decisions in a fast-moving environment, it is not easy to quantify that risk. And fundamentally, what we need to do is figure out how to use techniques that are available now with the data that is available now to help decision makers make the right decision. And we all talk about AI all the time, but it's really, I mean, you don't, when we speak to clients, they talk about what AI project should we start, and that's not the right question, right? It's not what the AI is just a technology, it's a means to an end. I think the real question is what's the business challenge, what's the use case you're trying to solve, and if it requires use of sophisticated techniques, AI inclusive, we'll use that. If it is not, then we don't need to use that. But fundamentally, helping manage risk in a fast-moving environment is what these quantitative techniques and models achieve now at scale, which they weren't able to do before.
Yeah, and Graham, what were the traditional approaches when you go into a distributor and they're considering, you know, buying your software? What have they traditionally been using that they're looking to replace and upgrade from?
You know, when I think about this question, I think about where I started my career, which was an entry-level sales position, right? At a distribution company. And I think a lot of those challenges are the same today as they were 15 years ago,
Yeah.
right? You know, a lot of times there's high customer expectations, which means, you know, we need that inventory in stock so we can ship same day. We need to make sure that we're getting those orders entered very quickly. We need to make sure that we're assessing customer credit worthiness quickly. We're giving them the credit terms when they're asking for them so that we can get that customer in the door, we can get that sale, right? But, you know, in addition to that, you know, when I think about that question as well, I think a lot of distributors also struggle a little bit with truly understanding their customers and their needs, right? Because a lot of times there are those high expectations, but I think you can also level set some of those expectations. You know, I'm thinking of stock agreements. I'm thinking of how much credit exposure are we giving to these customers? And oftentimes, at least what I've seen in some of the distributorships that I've worked for or worked with while I'm here at Esker, it is really just a matter of better understanding what are the needs, what are the time frames, what exposure are we going to give them, which then can help to better manage the rest of that business so that we can get better idea of what kind of forecast we need for inventory planning. We have a better understanding of demand. We have a better understanding of what our credit exposure will look like. And then also in turn, having a better idea of when are we going to get paid on these products as well.
Right. Yeah, right. Doesn't matter. Cash is king, right? Doesn't matter until you get paid for it. Okay. So, Greg, so you started your company, you said 15 years ago?
25. Well, so Smart Software was founded 40 years ago.
Okay.
I started with them 25 years ago, and roughly
got it.
10 years ago, we started to manage the business before it was acquired by Epicor on May 1st of this year.
Okay, sorry. Right. So you guys have been doing this work for a long time. How has your technology evolved over the years? I mean, in you know, what have been the new emerging technologies available? Are there new emerging data sets that have become available that have made the technology better? Because, you know, this term garbage in, garbage out has always applied in technology, and it applies today, even AI. I mean, I think AI can take a higher portion of garbage in data and still make sense of it, but there's still a garbage in, garbage out component to it. What has changed over the years in terms of how well the software can forecast demand with not always great demand history? And are you getting better data sets from distributors as they organize their operations more effectively?
Well, first, it's easier to get data now because many companies have already digitally transformed and migrated to an ERP system. So the data is now stored and structured in an organized way. So it's fairly easy to extract that data. It's just as difficult to convert that data into an accurate, what we call demand signal, because many companies don't have good data governance around entering a proper sales order. So if you book a sales order into a system and there are 10 different ways you can flag a sales order, some of those sales orders may be special because you've discounted it to get rid of extra inventory. You don't want that counted in your demand signal, right? And so a lot of companies just don't do a good job of labeling the transactions when they book an order, ship an order, et cetera. So that still requires a lot of work, but compared to 30, 25 years ago when I started, it's much easier to get data. We have APIs, we have integrations. For example, the inventory planning and optimization suite's fully integrated to Epicor's ERP systems, right? So we can import data. There's still work to do, right? But you have a big head start there to get proper data. I don't love the term garbage in, garbage out, because what it tends to do to buyers is make them think, well, I can't get started, right? I can't get started because my data is garbage. Well, I can tell you 100% of the companies that have said, hey, my demand signal isn't right, that haven't started a project, and you follow up with them a year, 2, 3, 4 years later, still haven't gotten their data right. So, and 100% of the companies that have started a project that had not so great data initially, missing unit cost, missing lead times in their ERP, demand signal that they didn't really know what their true demand was. Maybe they had an Excel spreadsheet somewhere that said the demand. That's what sales thinks. Operations has another spreadsheet thinking that that's what their demand is. So there was no single source of demand truth. That is something that technology companies can help you to improve. And when you put a stake in the ground, like let's invest in an inventory optimization and forecasting software, you have a very specific reason to now implement, right? To now fix that data because you want to use that data to become a better inventory decision maker. So it is true, garbage in, garbage out is true, but I think if used in the wrong context, it will inhibit a lot of buyers and frankly becomes an excuse not to invest in technology at this point in time, when in reality, the technology investment is a catalyst for fixing that garbage and getting the data clean. And one of the assets that's going to come out of a technology investment in forecasting, for example, is a pristine structured set of demand history that the company now agrees this represents our demand. Now you can start applying the analytics that Chandra was talking about, get a better prediction of customer demand that Graham was talking about, right? So things in terms of things changing over the years with how things have improved. Obviously, there's been big jumps in machine learning over the years. However, what we've observed is that a lot of those forecast accuracy improvements tend to come on like the really high volume items where there's a lot of external data that you can link up and train ML models to find correlations and then wield those correlations to come up with a better prediction in the future and doing that at scale. The challenge is for most distributors, that's just not super attainable, right? Because you need data scientists to train the data. You need to have a database of external variables that's also clean. So we talk about garbage. If you're just trying to forecast history of usage or demand, that's one signal. But now if you're trying to connect that and extrapolate its relationship to other signals, those signals need to be clean too. So you're just making that garbage in, garbage out problem bigger and bigger. So one of the things that we've tried to emphasize is what we call data light forecasting, really just minimizing the number of assumptions you need to make and using the power of the data to simulate what's possible. And depending on where the conversation goes, we can talk more about that. But garbage in, garbage out is a real thing. But don't use it don't let it inhibit your decision to invest in tech.
Well, I will say this. We do a lot of work with a lot of different distributors. Every one of them thinks they have terrible data.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, okay, Chandra. So actually, we got a question here from Ron Paulson, whom I know you know. And Ron Paulson and I first met. We worked in the same branch in the Chicago area in 1989. We're in our little Granger ties. So that was a long time ago. But he's pointing out that back in the days, if we made a forecasting mistake, we had excess inventory or dead inventory. And AI, leverages large data to make better decisions. But I think one of the things that AI is doing is it's not only helping you forecast inventory better. I mean, it really is helping you improve customer experience and, through better service levels at the same time in ways that traditional software couldn't. That's what you guys do, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Hey, RP, glad to have you on the webinar. And before I answer your question, I'm going to have to agree completely 100% with what Greg said, which is the data side of it is incredibly important, but should not be a showstopper for starting to implement some transformational initiatives within your organization, especially with the kind of technology you have available right now, and at the cost point that they're available right now. I mean, if you go back many years, you'll have to spend literally millions of dollars on implementing a good forecasting solution. You don't have to do that anymore. It's available, so you can start trying, in small prototypes, and then expand that to the rest of the organization. So there's various techniques you can use to reduce the risk in these projects. And we really put our clients on a maturity curve. We call it the AI maturity curve, where we actually start from the data and we use various AI techniques to actually spot anomalies within the data and help clean the data, enhance data sets, improve unit of measures and so forth. And some of those solutions are very have been used for many years, so they actually mature. It's not it's not that we're trying something brand new in these industries. But having said that, to go back to your question, I really put AI into three broad categories of solution. Okay, one is what I call the customer facing application. There's a lot of confusion in the industry about generative AI. What can it do? What should we use it for? Everybody seems to want to implement generative AI in every organization. You talk to consulting companies, they say let's go Gen AI. But fundamentally, there's a class of solutions that you can use for that you can solve using generative AI. And those are all client-facing, knowledge mining kind of use cases, where generative AI actually is very very successful, and those actually impact customer experience. So you can do mining of emails, for example. So a lot of emails comes from clients, and you have to find out what's in those emails. Is it a new product request? Is it a new quotation request? Is it a complaint on something? The emails are coming in from suppliers, which may have information that you need to use to give, like Greg was saying, lead time estimations to your client. So a lot of knowledge mining, customer interaction kind of use cases are one type of use cases that AI can help with, just reducing the latency, the noise, and help you better manage your customer experience. And then there's a separate class of use cases that I talked about and Greg talked about, which we call operational use cases. We use a combination of statistical methods and operational AI tools, like the forecasting applications, inventory optimization applications, where you can combine techniques such as neural networks or machine learning and so forth to solve for those issues. So those are operational use cases that are more inside looking, but have deep impact on your on your business. And then there's a class of use cases that you deploy using AI, which really talks about automation, the kind of things Graham talks about, using AI for improving and streamlining processes within the organization. So it's important for every organization to understand that at the end of the day, it's all ROI, right? So what is the problem you're trying to solve for? I mean, is it a forecasting issue that you're trying to solve for because you have excess stock or you're not able to keep the service levels, or you're trying and improve the customer experience? The kind of use case will then, on the kind of AI applications or the AI technology you'd use, would depend upon that use case. So a fundamental thing to do is to figure out what business application or business challenge you want to try and solve.
Excellent, good. And if anyone else has a question, please feel free to jump in. So Graham, I've got one for you. When you get a prospective distributor on a call and they've reached out and they say, hey, we're interested in your solution. I mean, sometimes what I've noticed, we get a lot of calls from distributors who are saying, man, our board's putting pressure on us to adopt some AI. What should we do? Right. Which I think, as the other guys talked about, is really the wrong way. You should be focused on what's the solution I need, what's the problem I'm trying to solve, or what's the solution. And AI, which pretty much is going to be in every technology, it shouldn't be the defining characteristic of your consideration set, but it does provide new tools. When you get a call from a customer like that, and let's say that they are sophisticated enough to say, I'm trying to solve a problem, not just looking for AI, what are the indicators that this client will be successful? Is it something about the talent that they have? Is it the mindset that they have? Is it the sophistication or their level of their data? Maybe contrast it with someone who's probably going to struggle because they need to get some things in order before they consider another technology solution.
What comes to my mind is user buy-in. Because where I've seen the most failed projects is either the users don't want to adopt the solution from the jump, or there's been some turnover within the organization. There was a champion who was really invested in the technology that we have. They left. There was some turnover by the users. Now they don't know how to use the solution. They don't know how to manage the solution. So instead of, trying to train up on it, to do the research, to make sure that they're capitalizing on this investment, they say, we're just going to go back to doing it, the way that we're comfortable with. Right. And one thing that I was thinking about when Greg had shared how he doesn't really like, that garbage in, garbage out philosophy, that also kind of reminded me of one of my least favorite sayings, which is, well, we've always done it this way, right? Which is kind of similar to the point that I just mentioned. And I think really that causes the biggest risk for failure. So anytime that I'm talking with any prospective customers, with existing customers, if we're looking at new solutions, okay, let's meet with the users, because those users are also going to understand more about these processes, more about these challenges than anybody in the organization. So, if we can understand, hey, what are you struggling with? What do you think needs to be done here? How would you do it? If you could, then we can make sure that that's a successful project, because a lot of things are going to be missed. And my advice for anybody that might be exploring some sort of, application for AI, if you have an idea of, hey, these are the problems we have, this is what we're looking to solve. Who are the stakeholders that are involved in that process, that are invested in that area of the business? Talk to them, understand, hey, where are you struggling? What do you think we should do here? And that can probably give you a great basis for where do we go next and what do we start looking at. Especially in my world, I mentioned earlier, we have solutions for customer service, for invoice to cash, and source to pay. That's a very, very broad offering. And, I recall conversations when I was more involved on the invoice to cash side of the house, where somebody would call, hey, I just need AR automation. Okay, what does that mean? Well, I need it all. Okay, well, we have 6 different solutions. Let's try to better understand, what are the challenges, what are the initiatives, what are the expectations that your leaders have. Then we can kind of work our way back to say, okay, this is a logical starting point because of these issues that you're facing or these outcomes that you're looking for. And then we can expand from there.
So, okay, that's interesting. I mean, so first of all, you have to get access to those users, right? They have to agree to put them in the process. But it also reminds me that, some of this is about requirements definition, right? I mean, they should have worked with those users when in order to establish the requirements. But maybe Greg, this is a question for you. At what point should a distributor come to you, an Epicor, for a solution? I mean, is it before the requirements definition stage so that they can get some expertise about that, particularly since there's so much new technology available? Or do you find that it's better use of everybody's time if they come to you with, maybe it's not an RFP, but it's sort of a pre-RFP, if you will?
That's going to depend on each individual customer's prospects maturity, right? I mean, if for example, they've recently hired a VP of supply chain who's implemented these sort of solutions in the past in a very successful way, well, then one would expect that they would want to define requirements before bringing in, any sort of vendor. On the other side, if you're unfamiliar with like how to solve the problem, but you have certain problems such as frequent stockouts, manual processes. There's an old saying, my father-in-law gave me when I was interested in buying a ring to propose to my wife. If you don't know jewelry, know your jeweler, right? So if you have a good technology partner that you've had success with, and you're not sure how to implement, say, one of Graham's solutions for, cash collect or forecasting or inventory optimization, go to the partner that's helped you implement other areas and ask them, hey, how would you help me solve this problem? Right? Because we can't know everything. And especially if you haven't implemented it before, right? So it's going to depend. What I where I feel we can be quite successful is when prospects come with a clear problem statement. And to piggyback off the earlier question, like what do you look for? It's really a need to change. There has to be an acknowledgement by the business that we must change our current practices because the current process is just not good enough to allow us to be competitive in the marketplace. Okay, and if they come to the table with that, well, then you're going to have the organizational inertia to actually implement change. Because, you know, what you mentioned, Graham, about users, that's a change management process.
Mhm.
And you can't change unless top down organizationally there's a need to change, and that's accepted from top down to middle management to the end users. So yeah, I that's what I really look for, and really just a willingness to go on a journey with the seller, right? Are you interested in learning our perspective, our approach, how we would go about doing things? If you happen to have a detailed list of requirements, that's perfectly okay. We just need to work through how we would address those specific requirements. And I would suggest to a buyer, be willing to have the technology vendor prescribe how they would solve the problem that you're posing, as opposed to show me exactly how you do it according to this specific requirement.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we see a lot on an RFP, you know, do you have this exact forecasting technique? Well,
Yeah.
maybe we don't, but frankly, that's
Maybe
not
it's not required.
right. Yeah. So things like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Greg and Graham more. I just want to add on one additional aspect to this, which is proof of value. We're big on proof of value. It is a way to test out an approach, right? I mean, we all talk technology, but technology, like I said, is just a means to an end, right? There's a process aspect of technology which is absolutely essential. You need to have good change management process and all, but the approach on how you solve the problem. You don't need to implement technology for that, right? And if you take a small part of your business, a bunch of a region, a bunch of distribution centers, a product line or 3 product lines, right? And then you say, okay, let's try and solve for that small slice of the business with this approach and see whether it actually delivers value. We've done that many times. So one of the largest publicly traded company in the distribution space, we've delivered a proof of value. They're 2-step to their clients. So they sell to distributors, and those guys sell to the end consumers. They don't know what their sell-through rates are. How do you calculate something like that? And what are the external factors that are going to impact the sell-through? There's literally 1,000 variables out there that can impact sell-through. Econometric variables, consumer behavior, whether there's ton of this. When we came down to 270 some variables are going to impact the sell-throughs, and we're able to provide weightage for each of those variables and how much they impact the sell-throughs. It was a proof of value. It was a 3-month project, a small amount of money invested in it, but it gave them confidence that this approach will actually work. So that's another way of trying to test new technology. And I think that's essential, and we're not doing enough of that in the industry.
Yeah, I would add like an important kind of precursor to actually believing the value that the technologist is going to deliver or show or prove during these POCs is because I think the ROI, early in my career, right? Like we would get customers and they'd say, hey, prove it to me. And I'd say, send me your data. And they'd send me the data, and I'd run the forecast models, and I'd send them the results. And, I'd show them that these results were more accurate than their baseline method. And I'd run through that. And it didn't always lead to a sale. In many respects, sometimes the savings you're showing are just so high that they just don't believe it.
Don't believe it.
Right. And so what I've learned over the years is that we really, and this is for both the seller and the buyer's sake, there has to be a decision point which says, hey, what this technologist is offering, without even seeing my data, right, first, is the way that I want to improve my decision making, right? I want to, the way that they're showing me it's going to improve decision making is necessary for my business. Now, the next question, if once that is actually internalized and agreed to, because the old base case, the old ways of doing things are just no longer sustainable. Once they agree that this decision-making process that I'll now have with this tech is the right move, then and only then does the ROI assessment make sense. Otherwise, they just look at it as, at least in my experience, hey, some vendor just kind of took my data, did their magic to it, and then said we're going to save a bunch of money. Of course, they said we're going to save a bunch of money. So we want to get through that step on both the seller side and the buyer side, where there's validation on, yes, what they're showing is actually physically a way that we want to change, and why. And then once that there's been buy-in organizationally on that, then hey, let's validate it. Let's validate it. Let's get some of your data. Let's run a POC. Let's show you how it works. You know, if you need that, if you need that.
Hey,
Yeah,
Greg,
I agree with you, Greg. Sorry, Ian, just
that's
a
right.
quick, kind of follow-up thought on that, right? Greg, if you take traditional technologies, process management techniques, planning tools and so forth, that's been around for, years, decades, right? I kind of agree with what you said. I mean, that's the right way to do it. But if you talk about applying, really advanced quantitative modeling techniques to help decision makers make, decisions, you don't run into very mature, knowledgeable customers because it's a new field.
Right.
It's a new field for them. And, part of the problem is, I have to trust something that I know very little of, and I have to trust something is going to work. How would you show them, the clients that it's actually working? So for example, one of the biggest problems the industry is trying to solve is proper return on invested capital. It's not a new problem. It's, this problem has been, it's a really old problem, and there's science and methods written up by Nobel laureates on this, right? So you're sitting there and trying to figure out how to take a really old problem and apply new technique to it. And one of the techniques we use in the financial service industry is Monte Carlo simulation, value at risk modeling. These are techniques that we use for asset management in the financial services industry because it's the same exact problem. I've got $100 million. I'm an institutional investor. I've got $100 million, and I need to figure out
right.
how to invest the $100 million to maximize return and minimize risk, right? And your risk is your baseline risk is Standard & Poor's risk or Nasdaq, whatever you decide to pick, right? But there's a risk, industrial risk that you can take as a baseline risk. It's the same exact problem. Now we have applied that technique in retail and manufacturing and distribution, but it's a new approach to solving that problem. So how do you kind of prove that this is actually going to work? So for us, the proof of value discussion is now, okay, I don't have to spend a lot of money. I spend a little bit of money, but I can see this working. And I agree with you. Even after they see it working, they may say, I'm not so sure. But at least, you've educated a client or a prospect on a new approach that may or may not, result in a sale. But the education is so important because then they can go talk to a few others, and then over a period of time, it becomes prolific in an industry. So that's how I see this. But I appreciate what you're saying, Greg.
Hey, Graham, let's switch over to your area of expertise, because I think it's easier in some ways to quantify the return on better performing inventory than better performing cash flow in your AP AR world. But there are a couple of real factors to take into account. One is, I know, and I think there are other people that are familiar with a company that was a mid-sized distributor, and they went bankrupt because their inventory dropped too low and their accounts receivable got too high and no longer qualified for covenant coverage, and the bank called their loans. Now, there were other factors involved. So that wasn't 100% of the problem with this distributor, but certainly that was a big part of it. And so these are very serious issues, not just to improve service levels and to perform better, but to, avoid violating bank covenants, right? And so when you go in and talk about these solutions that you offer, I mean, there's this range of benefits, right? There's seamless transactions, there are more efficient operating procedures. You get better analytics because you're actually tracking what's going on, which means you can improve the processes. But there's also this notion of staying out of trouble. So when you're presenting to customers and distributors, where are the sensitivities now? And what piques their interest the most about coming up with a better technology and an AI-enabled solution to this side of working capital?
That's a tough question because it varies by
Yeah, sure.
every customer,
Right.
and it's been mentioned a couple times that, in a perfect world, somebody comes to me, says, hey, this is everything that I need. These are all the challenges that I have. Here's the business case that we're looking to achieve,
Right.
and, to Greg's words, prescribe me something here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really changes. In my world, again, it's usually centered around customer service or finance operations. Oftentimes they're coming in because, hey, we don't have the time to be able to truly service our customers. We need to be able to set better expectations with our customers on when their product's going to be delivered. We need to free up our collections team so that they can quit focusing on the highest dollar amount and the oldest invoice and really get the bulk of that so that we can lower our DSO, open up additional cash flow, pay off some of our loans. So, I mean, it really depends. But I would say if I look at the entire journey of a customer or the entire journey of an order, right? There are a couple outcomes that I think are relevant across the entire cycle. Number one is your cost to serve, which expands across both your customer service team as well as your AR team. And oftentimes, the highest cost to serve is with the lowest volume customers, because that customer that orders 1, 2, 3, 4 times a year, they might be calling in their order. They might be trying to text in an order. They're sending a free text email, which then requires a human to take that information, go into the ERP, enter that information, do whatever. And then on the back end of that as well, oftentimes those are some of the customers that you just kind of have to chase. So they might have a net 30, but they're, paying on day 50 on average.
Yeah.
They require, a couple touches within there. So, I think that overall cost to serve is a big one. And then also the DSO and also preventable deductions, right? So if you're limiting the amount of order entry errors, if you have the ability to change customer orders quicker, because you don't have this massive time between reception and entry of the initial order, the change order, the cancellation, what have you. And then also being able to get that information in sooner so that you can meet those customer contracts. If there are any SLAs within those contracts, I know some of the companies I work with, which is usually on the manufacturing end, when they're selling to distributors, there could be fines if that order doesn't get entered that day, if that's not fulfilled or shipped within 48 hours, if it's not received within a certain time period, depending again on your business. And when it comes to kind of the DSO and then also those write-offs, if you can respond to customers quicker, if you can get a better idea of what are your customers asking you for consistently, be able to analyze that, maybe provide more options. One example could be, hey, we get a ton of invoice requests. We get a ton of order status requests. Okay, let's open that up on e-commerce then, so that customers can go there, they can see that information. Now, I don't have a teammate that is bogged down with just finding that invoice, sending it, looking up that tracking, sending it over. And then also, if you're more proactive and if you can get to those customers quicker, respond to them quicker, and resolve any kind of issues quicker, that's going to in end lower that DSO, because that claim isn't sitting out there for 60 days because my team is so focused on the collections activities, on getting orders or quotes entered into the system. They have the time to make sure that they're proactively reaching out to these customers. They're proactively setting new expectations based on changes, whether that's from the customer or something else. So I would really say, again, cost to serve, DSO, and then limiting the amount of write-offs or preventable deductions are, I think, some of the three key topics that I see as some of those outcomes.
Okay, so there's this. Thank you. Good answer. There's this measurement called cash conversion cycle, right? Which is basically days sales outstanding, or DSO, basically, and days inventory on hand minus days payable, right? And I think Granger's like 85 days or something. They were last time I checked. It might have been a few years ago. And a lot of electrical plumbing distributors, they're well over 100 days, right? Well, Amazon's negative days, which Walmart was down to single digit. We were like, within Amazon, because of their business model, they're negative cash conversion cycle, which I don't think anyone has done before on a large scale. Now, Amazon Business is probably slightly positive because they offer better financing and stuff. But this is real money. This is real consumption of invested capital that is hugely different between Amazon Business, which, by the way, just announced that they're doing bin replenishment and they're going to do vending, and I mean they're coming after distributors. And it feels to me that we've got the people on the phone, right, who can compress your cash conversion cycle. Are distributors sufficiently aware of the need to drive down their cash conversion cycle number, and that there are new tools available to do that? Or are they kind of ignoring this new player that's doing it on a negative basis and thus generating a superior return? And you guys here, what's the sensitivity to this measurement with distributors? I bet your CFOs know about it, but is that pretty much where it ends when you talk to distributors?
I can touch on that one. I talk to a lot of supply chain, a lot of operations, and a lot of finance folks. And I think everybody in the distribution space, for the most part, knows that their customers want that Amazon-like experience. Yeah. They want to know that item is being entered quickly. They want to know that item is going to leave the door quickly and be delivered before they want it. I would say that's something that a lot of companies come to us for. Hey, our customers demand that Amazon-like experience. How can you help us?
Yeah, I get that. I agree. Yeah. But the distributors want the Amazon-like cash conversion cycle, right? And they're not close. They're probably closer to delivering the experience than they are the cash conversion cycle numbers. Yeah. They're probably not that close to either in many cases. I don't know, Chandra, what do you think?
Yeah, you can. I think we've talked enough about this the last 45 minutes, right? Fundamentally, we're talking about symptoms and causes, right? And you have to figure out cash conversion cycle is a symptom of a problem or a solution, or an approach or a process, right? That's what you see at the very end. So it's a symptom. So the problem is not your cash conversion cycle. The problem is something further upstream. Maybe you need to improve your planning processes by looking at putting better forecasting in, right? And we talk about forecasting, but that's just one part of the whole solution, right? What do you forecast for? You're forecasting because you want to buy better. So the question really is, when you start looking at forecasting and you look at 3 months, 6 month out forecast, and let's say you're just selling one SKU, okay? You still are constrained by how much capital you can invest in the SKU. And let's say your forecast is giving you a certain number. Let's say it says 100 units. You have to decide how much of the forecast you want to capture. You want to capture 80% of that forecast, the demand. You want to capture 60. Is that, what's the number? So the decision you really need to make is, how much do I buy? Okay, and it's a very difficult problem to solve because forecast is intrinsically, risky. You don't know what the other variables within the environment are going to impact the forecast when it comes to time, right? So you can deploy certain techniques, and this is for one SKU, Ian. Now you're talking about firms that have 100,000 SKUs, and you have to make this decision for every single SKU. How much to buy for this? And obviously there's interdependencies because you have only so much money. So this is a problem that you can solve at scale using some really sophisticated methodologies, mathematical models that will exactly tell you how much margin is at risk if you make certain decisions based on the targets that you're setting, right? So Amazon is able to do all of this because they have been over a lifetime implementing many of these techniques in their businesses. You can order a product on Amazon and have it delivered tomorrow, or even same day delivery. How's that even possible? They got to have that stock sitting somewhere close to you for you to make this happen, right? So we have to solve I'm going to say the core pillars before and then if you solve that, better forecasting, better inventory optimization, better distribution optimization, putting certain risk management tools, which are you don't need to be a scientist to do this. That's my job, right? You know how to run your business. I don't know how to run your business, right? But I know how to solve these issues, right? So it's a collaboration between people who know their business and people who know math, right? And you sit down together and you're able to solve these issues. And if you do that, you'll automatically see cash conversion cycles improve, right? The other places we have deployed this is cash flow forecasting, right? You have to know what's coming, right? So you put some forecasting engine in there and say, okay, what's my expected cash flow over the next 90 days? And then you decide you can use certain behavioral economics kind of solutions to understand, okay, this customer is almost always delaying the cash payment by a few days or a few weeks. This one is always paying before. I mean, you can use some of these techniques to find patterns within your data and use that to forecast cash flow and deploy that additional techniques for saying, okay, how do I now categorize my suppliers? Which ones are top tier suppliers that I have to pay on time? Yeah. Which ones I can pay late? So you can use many techniques to actually take the unknown out of all these decisions, Ian. And if you solve for those, then your cash conversion cycle will improve tremendously.
Yeah, no, I get it. And Greg, I mean, I think, return on invested capital is even a more macro measurement, right? And then cash conversion cycle, they're not directly derivative. One's not derivative of the other, but one's more granular than the other. And then underneath that is your, accounts receivable, accounts payable, your inventory performance, et cetera. And I think to Chandra's point, eventually you get down to individual customers, individual transactions, individual SKUs. But it feels like companies need a dashboard that have like this sort of this funnel of, pretty broad. You start with, EBITDA, their sales, EBITDA, then you get to other measurements like return on invested capital, and then these others. But what does the dashboard look like for a customer so that they have a good balance between granularity and a macro view of the direction of the business when it comes to understanding how well they're performing with working capital?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you should see in a dashboard in terms of your inventory management, inventory planning, because we get this all the time, the root cause that the customer feels that the root cause of their inventory imbalances, which obviously leads to excess stock, write-offs, and then where the rubber meets the road is when you're buying stuff, when you're giving up your cash, right? And you fully control that as a distributor. You control when you decide to buy more, okay? You can't control when your customers are going to pay you, but if you're bringing that inventory in far too soon, that's going to impact your cash collections on that, because you didn't need to buy it when you did. So from a dashboard perspective, the way to address those root causes, the root cause is not supply variability or demand variability or unpredictability. Those are supply chain facts of life. The root cause is how companies choose to protect and defend against those sources of uncertainty. And so from a dashboard perspective, what you should want to know is, what is the predicted probability of stock out on average across all my business by group and then by individual part? If I'm predicting based on all of the potential demand that could be simulated, that I have a high probability of stock out, say more than 5% or more than 10%, those are parts that I need to examine, and I need to proactively change those reorder points, right? I need to increase those order points so that I'm reducing the probability of stock out. At the same time, I can find a group of parts where the probability of stock out is zero. And that might sound good because we're going to maximize our, revenue capture on that. No matter what the demand is going to be, we'll be able to fill it whenever the customer orders it. The problem with that is once you get to 100%, you're way overstocked. You may be able to cut that inventory by 20% and get 99.5% chance of not running out. So too many dashboards today are focused on the past. They're focused on, well, what was my service level? What were my turns? What was my on-hand stock? But that doesn't really tell you anything about what changes you need to make. So what we want to see in our dashboards is a prediction for every part about the stock out risk and the consequences of reducing that stock out risk. And if I reduce the stock out risk, are the holding costs that I'm going to have to incur, do those outweigh the actual benefit of decreasing the stock out risk? Knowing that and having that at your fingertips so that you can know where to make changes is critical, and it's not done enough. It's really not done enough right now. It's too backward looking.
All right, so we're just about out of time. Graham, real quick, what's the effect of customer satisfaction of implementing these tools? So beyond the financial performance, what happens to the relationships with suppliers and customers?
They get better, right? If you're able to answer questions effectively, get them the products that they need when they want them, make it easy for them to do business with you, they're going to be happy, and more than likely they're going to be repeat customers.
Well, that's what we all want, right? So yeah, no, that's my experience too. I mean, I think there's an unprecedented now ability for AI to add value in ways that improves customer satisfaction and working capital at the same time. All right, if I can get the audience to hold on for one more minute, we have our 100th episode of the Wholesale Change Show. It's a webcast and it's a podcast. And Ron Paulson, who's in the audience right now, is going to be joining us. Ron, we're thrilled to have you talk about the history of wholesale change, what we've learned over the years, where we're going in the future in the world of distribution, and also Eric Wessinger from the Richard Supply Company. That episode will be sponsored by Epicor, White Cup, and Zorro. So panelists, thank you so much for your time. It was great working with you. Really enjoyed the discussion, and we'll see everyone on the upcoming 100th episode of Wholesale Change. Have a great balance of the week, everyone. Bye now.